Recently, a dramatic event occurred in the field of international trade. China, as the world's largest soybean importer, suddenly announced a suspension of soybean imports from Brazil. Surprisingly, China's grain storage company announced in February 2025 that it had booked 1.25 million metric tons of American soybeans and planned to start delivery in April this year. You may be confused when you hear this. Brazil and China are both BRICS countries and have maintained a solid friendship for a long time. But why did China choose to cooperate with the United States, which has always regarded each other as a competitor? Although some experts have analyzed that this decision may be related to Brazil's malicious propaganda against China's BYD automobile company. Because before this, the Brazilian government had publicly accused BYD of suspected forced slave labor, and the construction of the Chinese factory also encountered a shutdown order from the Brazilian government. So, in the next video, I will analyze in depth for everyone. Why did China refuse to buy Brazilian soybeans? Why did it choose American soybeans again? If you like our video content, please click to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can receive all our latest video content. Now let's get into today's topic. Among the countries in the world, the United States and Brazil are among the world's largest soybean producers. According to data from 2024, Brazil's soybean production reached a staggering 128 million tons, ranking first in global soybean production. The United States followed closely behind with a production of 126 million tons, ranking second in the world. The production scale of the two countries not only determines the soybean supply pattern in the global market, but also occupies a pivotal position in global agriculture. However, as the country with the largest grain consumption in the world, China's demand for soybeans is also huge, consuming approximately more than 140 million tons of soybeans each year. This huge demand has made China a major buyer in the global soybean market, and currently more than 60% of the world's soybean purchases come from China. So in the past few years, Brazil has been a source of soybean imports for China. But you may not know that in fact, before Trump's first term as US president, the United States has always been China's largest soybean exporter, once occupying 80% of the Chinese market. It was not until 2018 that the Trump administration launched a sustained trade war against China, and American soybean growers lost this huge market. At the same time, Brazil quickly seized the opportunity and successfully replaced the United States as China's largest source of imported soybeans in just a few years. According to my investigation, between 2019 and 2024, China's soybean imports from Brazil accounted for more than 70% of its total soybean imports, while the share of soybeans from the United States dropped sharply to less than 30%. As soybean exports gradually turned to the Brazilian market, China has also strengthened its cooperation with Brazil in many agricultural fields. In addition to soybeans, the proportion of corn, crude oil, meat, and other products exported by Brazil to China is also increasing. According to statistics, the trade volume between Brazil and China has exceeded $180 billion in 2024, further consolidating the economic ties between the two sides. In fact, China has been Brazil's largest trading partner for 15 consecutive years, and the trade volume between the two countries has exceeded $100 billion for 6 consecutive years. But surprisingly, in February 2025, Brazil suddenly announced a market-shaking news. China, as the world's largest soybean importer, has suspended the acceptance of soybean products from 5 Brazilian companies. So, what happened behind this? In fact, the Chinese Customs Department issued a notice refusing to accept some Brazilian soybeans as early as January this year. According to official explanations, the reason for the suspension of acceptance is that some goods failed to meet the relevant standards for plant health, especially soybean products involving 5 Brazilian companies. Although the specific names of the 5 companies have not been made public, relevant information shows that China has stopped accepting all soybean shipments from Brazil's cargills since January. Soon after, 3 other Brazilian companies also stopped shipping soybeans to the Chinese market. According to data from the past year, the soybean exports from these 5 companies to China accounted for about 30% of Brazil's total soybean exports to China, so they play an important role in Brazil's soybean exports to China. It is worth noting that although Brazil's soybean supply is tight, as South America is in the early stages of the soybean harvest, Brazil's soybean shipments are expected to increase rapidly as the harvest peaks in the coming weeks. In this case, China's decision to suspend the receipt of some soybeans may have a more far-reaching impact on the Brazilian economy. Faced with this situation, Brazil's agricultural sector has had to take measures to appease the emotions of domestic farmers, saying that Brazil's soybean exports to China will not be greatly affected overall in the future. In addition, Brazil has also promised to actively communicate with the Chinese government and provide all kinds of information required to strive to lift this temporary embargo as soon as possible. We all know that China buys almost 60% of the world's soybeans, and more than 70% of imported soybeans come from Brazil. So, if China stops importing Brazilian soybeans, where will the remaining market share be supplemented? According to my investigation, China has recently chosen to purchase American soybeans. At the end of 2024, China Grain Reserves Corporation purchased 500,000 tons of American soybeans for the first time, and then purchased another 750,000 tons in early 2025, totaling 1.25 million tons, and these soybeans will be delivered in March and April of this year, respectively. After hearing this news, many people may be confused. Why would China take the initiative to show goodwill to the United States? In addition, according to U.S. media reports, the price China purchased at that time was calculated based on the FOB price, which was about 90 cents higher than the Chicago Board of Trade March futures price and 80 cents higher than the May futures price. Compared with the Brazilian soybean FOB price at that time, the U.S. soybean price was about 80 cents to $1 higher. So why did China insist on buying higher-priced American soybeans? In fact, the reason behind this is that there have been some subtle changes in the relationship between China and Brazil. Initially, the Brazilian government and enterprises have been committed to promoting sustainable development and green transportation, which has also prompted China's technological advantages in the field of electric vehicles to become Brazil's key cooperation direction. In order to strengthen cooperation with China, Brazil has attracted Chinese car companies to invest $1 billion in the local area to build factories to produce electric vehicles. This not only brings a large number of direct and indirect employment opportunities to Brazil, but also promotes the development of related industrial chains. But surprisingly, at the end of 2024, Western media broke the news that when Chinese automobile company BYD built a factory in Brazil, the working conditions of Chinese workers involved were accused of slavery labor conditions. Faced with these accusations, the Brazilian Labor Department not only did not launch an investigation, but instead stood on the same side as the Western media to support these accusations. They still claimed that the 163 Chinese workers hired by BYD on the construction site of the Brazilian electric vehicle factory encountered slave-style employment. Among them, some shocking details were also reported. The passports of these workers were all seized. The wages were divided into 3 parts, and only 40% could be received every month. The workers worked 10 hours a day. The residents had no mattresses and cabinets, and 31 workers shared a toilet and other chilling conditions. But in fact, most of these accusations were malicious propaganda by Western media. Although BYD company quickly made a public explanation and adjustment commitment, the US and Western media did not let it go, but continued to report it extensively. In the end, these accusations became a huge slander of Chinese companies by the international community. In this case, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs also clarified and explained. However, BYD's factory construction in Brazil eventually encountered a forced shutdown order from the Brazilian government. This series of events made many people believe that China's decision to suspend Brazilian soybean imports may be a retaliatory counterattack against Brazil's malicious propaganda, and also a warning and reminder to the Brazilian government. In addition to soybeans, China's Ministry of Commerce also announced that it would investigate imported beef at the request of beef industry representatives due to the difficulties faced by the domestic beef industry. In recent years, the decline in domestic beef prices in China has indeed attracted widespread attention, mainly due to the dual pressures of oversupply and insufficient demand. To address this problem, China plans to conduct an 8-month investigation starting in February 2025, but in special circumstances, the investigation period may be appropriately extended. It is worth noting that China particularly emphasized that this investigation is not aimed at any country or region and will not discriminate against products from different sources. However, Brazil is also well aware that as one of China's major beef exporters, once China launches an investigation, it will inevitably have a certain impact on Brazil's beef exports. Of course, some people also analyze that China's refusal to import Brazil's cheaper soybeans and choosing American soybeans may be related to Trump's new government policy. As we all know, Trump is a businessman and has always been very concerned about trade deficits and economic interests. During his presidential campaign, he repeatedly emphasized the need to achieve the goal of making America great again through tariff policies. Now, Trump has successfully entered the White House. Although his policy toward China is tougher than during the campaign, there have been some adjustments and relaxations. Against this background, the atmosphere of dialogue between China and the United States must be improved to create possibilities for further negotiations and cooperation. Now, China's increased purchase of American soybeans not only meets the growing demand for beans in the domestic market, but also sends a positive signal to the United States. China is willing to promote the stability and development of bilateral relations through practical actions and create opportunities to ease tensions between China and the United States. Although Sino-US trade relations are complex and often fluctuate, even if the United States launches a tariff war against China again, China can still exert influence through the price fluctuations of agricultural product import markets, especially soybeans. Looking back at the last round of Sino-US trade war, American soybeans became a major victim. At that time, the United States soybean exports to China plummeted by nearly 80%, which brought huge economic losses to American farmers who rely on soybeans as their main crop, with an estimated total loss of up to $11 billion. To not miss out on our future projects and news updates, please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. We will continue to provide you with more exciting and interesting content.